Hello and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy S24's camera. We're going to be taking a look at some of its features, expert RAW, low light, video quality, image stabilization, and a lot more. So stay tuned. Let's get right into the video. So I'm just going to start out the video by saying if you want to get the absolute best results you can out of this phone, I would very highly recommend using Pro Mode or Expert RAW. Alternatively, the kind of automatic base tab that opens when you open the camera app is really not that great. As you can see, there's kind of this weird fake HDR, extremely much over sharpening, and it just looks very cell phone like. So I'd very highly recommend staying away from the kind of base automatic tab and just switching to Pro Mode. If you want something automatic, you can even go to Pro Mode, set it to JPEG, everything on automatic, and it'll do the exact same thing as the automatic tab, except the images will just look a lot better. So again, very highly recommend it if you want to get the absolute best image quality you can. So first of all, there are three lenses. The wide angle lens is 50 megapixels, the ultra wide is 12 megapixels, and the telephoto is 10 megapixels. Now, of course, those numbers are going to be very inflated, especially the 50 megapixel one, as you can see in some of the examples here. Although I do notice a difference in the 50 megapixels and the 12 megapixels. So what I usually end up doing is I'll shoot on the 50 megapixel option. And as you can see in this example, this is a 50 megapixel file that was downscaled to 12 megapixels right beside a file that was shot in 12 megapixels. And you can see there is a big difference. And I do find, considering it still is a cell phone, the image quality is actually very nice. And then taking a look at the telephoto lens, you can see the image quality does downgrade quite a bit, but then cropping into the 50 megapixels, as you can see, the telephoto lens does retain more detail than the 50 megapixel cropped in. So it is worth it if you want to get more zoomed in pictures, and pretty much the same story with the ultra wide, as you can see in some of the examples here. So taking a look at Expert RAW, you can see the image quality is actually very nice, and they do look very different from the pictures taken in Pro Mode. And a lot of people are wondering why you need Expert RAW if there's Pro Mode and you can shoot RAW in Pro Mode. But just one important thing to note with Expert RAW is that the files aren't actually real RAW. They're what's called linear DNG 16-bit files, which are just multiple frames from the sensor put into one image that you can have a lot of flexibility in editing. So as you can see, there is a lot of flexibility, and I do use Expert RAW quite a lot. If you actually want to shoot in real RAW, you actually have to go to Pro Mode and turn it on, and then those files are actually going to be directly from the sensor. But what you're getting with Expert RAW is actually just multiple frames combined. So again, there's a lot of flexibility. So that's why pictures taken with Expert RAW are already going to be automatically sharpened, which isn't that great. And as you can see, the shadows do have a lot of weird artifacting and banding and all sorts of weird stuff going on. So in my opinion, because they give you the option to shoot real RAW files in Pro Mode, it's actually pretty interesting to play around in Expert RAW. But again, just one important thing to note is that they're not actually RAW. So now just one more thing to take into consideration with Expert RAW, and that is the files have actually changed since last year, and I was actually pretty disappointed with this. I took a lot of sample pictures, and when I imported them into my editor, it actually said that the files weren't compatible with them. So at first I thought maybe the files got corrupted or something. I took more tests. It happened with all of them. I tried it out with some Skylum and all-in-one products, as well as Darktable and Raw Therapy, and none of them worked. So I decided to send them over to someone who has access to some Adobe products. He tried it out in Lightroom, and the files opened. So most likely they changed something in the files. So yeah, just a quick warning, if you're using any Skylum products, all-in-one, Darktable, Raw Therapy, any of those, none of the current versions support the files that Expert RAW produces. If it changes, I'll definitely put that in the description, but as of right now, none of them do. So that's just one other thing to take into consideration. So now let's move on to low light. So first of all, I'm just going to show some examples. Here are some pictures taken in night mode, then some pictures taken in Pro Mode, and some pictures taken in Expert RAW. As you can see, again, I'd very highly recommend using Pro Mode. It's much more realistic, as if you're taking it with a actual proper camera. Pro Mode looks extremely cell phone-like, and a lot of weird smudging and weird things going on. So again, I'd very highly recommend using Pro Mode. Expert RAW is actually also very interesting. There's even a 10-minute option. I don't know why, maybe this is just for me, but there's a lot of banding going on if you edit those pictures. So again, I would say the winner is Pro Mode, and at least in my opinion, the results were actually satisfactory. So now taking a look at some of the video options, it does apparently shoot in 8K. As you can see in some of the examples, it's actually a lot better than I thought. I think they probably use some sort of a different algorithm when shooting in 4K, and everything below 4K and 8K. It just looks very different. And again, very similar to what I do with the pictures, I'll usually film in 8K and then afterwards downscale it to 4K, and the quality is going to be a lot better comparing it to if you just film in 4K. So yeah, actually a big thumbs up with 8K. There's a lot of detail again. And then with regard to frame rates, in 8K it can do 30 and 24 frames per second. and 4K it can do 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. If you want to get more slow motion, you can go to the slow motion tab. It's going to be fully automatic, but then you can do 4K 120 frames per second, and if you go down to 1080p, it can do 240 frames per second as well. And now just one last thing with shooting videos, I would very highly recommend turning stabilization off unless you're actually moving. If I'm just panning, I'll always have it turned off because there is a pretty significant upgrade in image quality. It just doesn't have to crop in so that it has the flexibility to move around. It will be shaky if you're walking. So again, if you need stabilization, turn it on and it does do a good job. But yeah, the image quality is just going to be a lot better if you turn it off. So now it's time for the final category, and that is low light in video. So I do find there are a lot of improvements comparing it to last year's S23, as you can see in the examples here. Even at ISO 3200, it does do a very good job of retaining the detail while keeping the noise out. It does kind of have that watercolor effect a little bit comparing it to lower ISOs, but overall with regard to low light, I would give it a big thumbs up. One thing I would definitely recommend to get the best results in low light is to stop down from 8K to 4K. For some reason, I don't know exactly why, but there's a lot more light and the results also look a lot better. So that's just a quick recommendation. As you can see in some of the examples here, 8K beside 4K. 4K is just a lot brighter. I don't know why that is. So that's just another recommendation. So in conclusion, I can very highly recommend the S24 for its camera system. Again, taking into consideration that it is still a cell phone, it does do a very good job at taking pictures. So again, I can very highly recommend it, and I can also confidently say that it is probably one of the best camera systems out there right now. So if you like this video, you can always consider subscribing. If you have any recommendations to make these reviews better, you can always leave them in the comments. So until the next trim reveals, bye for now.